Tales from Thunder Valley, baby. That's right. Devin Kupka and I were on the ground in Bristol, talked to a lot of drivers, saw a lot of racing, and well, we got a lot of things to discuss. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk about an Indy NASCAR doubleheader next year, and also a movement of the award show. A look at just the whole tire thing, a radio getting stolen, some IndyCar driver news, and hey, oh yeah, we're going to the Granite State as well. Another PRN race in New Hampshire. All of that right sure on 5 to Go. And welcome to episode 330 something. What is it, Devin? Do you know?
I think it's 331. Let me check real quick.
Yeah, yep. It's 330 something. We don't have a show open anymore. We're just rocking and rolling right here. I'm Doug Fireball Turnbull with Devin Kupka, Dan Elliott, and you're listening to the 5 to Go podcast. We're up on YouTube, GoPRN.com, Apple, and Spotify. I was embarrassed last week because I didn't send the link for Alexis Erickson to put it up on GoPRN.com until like days after the show, because a lot of times I will leave open my description that I type for that and copy and paste it into Spotify and Apple and YouTube, and then I sometimes forget to send the email, and that's certainly what happened there. So apologies if it got there late, but we're so thankful to everybody that listens. I'm, as said, Doug Fireball Turnbull from the announcing team at PRN. I got to be a pit reporter this past weekend with our talented crew there at Performance Racing Network, because we also bidded adieu to Rob Albright after 29 years at our broadcast team. And a side note, before I really get into the rest of you guys there, Rob Albright has said he will join us on an episode of 5 to Go. I decided not to do it this week. I'm thinking maybe in the off season we'll have Rob Albright and maybe some other luminaries for broadcasting that will get to reflect on their careers here. So stay tuned to the show, especially the off season. We're going to do some storytelling with Dan. I'm teasing ahead to the offseason. We have like 7 playoff races to go. Get it, okay? But I'm also traffic guy with 11 Alive with Rachel Cox Rosen, AJC Gridlock guy, and I got a host trivia tonight too. So we got it all going on. Joining me on the line, Devin and I roomed together, drove together. He helped me pop a few pimples. Like, it was a great weekend. He didn't do that. He refused, actually. Devin Kupka, he's our roving racing journo, and the man who crunches all the numbers, our super racing fanalist there. Hashtag hire Devin. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Just currently back at work for this week, and then hitting the road again this weekend. So it's like bam, bam, and then off, then bam again. So it's been good going back to work this week, and then it was a fun weekend at Bristol, I gotta say. And yeah, it's just been crazy. It's like, all right, we got a weekend full of stuff, and then weekdays it's business as usual, and then we go weekend with just events. That's just how life's been the past like month, it feels like.
Sounds like you're working on a race team, man. Now, Dev, you and I both had crazy schedules. I had a long day the Thursday before Bristol. I had to drive up at night. I mean, I was just, got there and was drowsy, but I waited for you to get back for the truck race that was won by Lane Riggs, and then you and I, of course, went in person together to see practice and qualifying for Xfinity and the Cup Series. We saw in the Xfinity Series, Eric Almirola. I had to think about it for a second. I was like, I knew it wasn't Zillage and it wasn't Sam Mayer. No, it was Eric Almirola go to victory lane there, and he had his kids in the post-race press conference arguing over the sword, the whole deal. And then, of course, Sunday, Christopher Bell breaks the long winless streak. Remember when he was the championship favorite? Well, then he blew up on the radio gateway and then managed his tires in Bristol, and he went to victory lane. But we didn't go to bed till 2-something in the morning, late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. And then each of us hustled back home. Me, because I had to get to my church group and see my high schoolers. You, Devin, though. I just want to ask, did you use an engagement ring, or was it kind of like an IOU thing when you proposed to Dua Lipa Sunday night?
No such thing.
No such thing. Devin, tell us what you did Sunday.
Hey, she came to my section though on the floor.
Okay, she came to your section, and then did you say IDGAF or no?
No, I didn't say any of that. She came over, like literally it was like 2 or 3 feet from me. But it was a lot of fun. I went VIP front row. Was at the barricade. Got there a little after 5. Got into the building around 6. Early entry. I know this sounds like, because you were telling me, oh, only good. I'm like, here's my reaction.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was expecting you to say eye-poppingly good, right? I mean, Dua Lipa, that's like your favorite artist. Mine's Red Hot Chili Peppers, and you were just like, it was good, but I expected.
It was good. I mean, but it's just, she does a good job. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't bad or anything. I kind of knew what to expect going in, and I got what I expected. It was a good show.
But okay, so it was good, and you know what to expect, but yet you're going to L.A. to see her again.
Yes. I mean, because I didn't get to see her in Atlanta Saturday night, so I'm making up for it. And I got to spend all those
You saw her
hotel
Sunday
points that
night,
I got to spend all those hotel points I've accrued too.
and not spend them at the racetrack, and instead sleep in the same room as me. Is that
Well,
okay?
it's more of a vacation thing than it is than going to another track. I mean, I love going to the track, but I'd rather spend my points on something other than business related stuff.
Hey, next time, help me with the pimples. All right, I'm just saying. That's no, I'm just kidding.
Hey, one thing though too about the Dua Lipa thing, the whole experience, the ticket and the VIP was only $315, and that's
That's
super
not bad for a
economical and big
frontline
shout out.
concert.
That's so economic for an artist that big to see her front row barricade for only 315 or 330 or something like that. I mean, if you're talking Taylor Swift, you're paying like $4,000 to do that.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
give big
Well, that,
props
that's
to
how
her and her team
crazy.
for doing that.
That's how crazy concerts have gotten, Dan Elliott. All right, so I'm gonna ask you, Dan, here after I introduce you. That's how crazy concerts have gotten. Is when you could get into a concert for $100 or less. So not VIP, but just regular like top row. You're hanging out with the maintenance guys up top. That's like one of the tickets I like to buy. You're like, man, I saved some money. Like those guys down there, like, man, they paid like hundreds of dollars, bro. And it's yeah, and you still paid like $100 to sit in the nosebleeds at a concert, to hear the echo of the show, right? So Dan Elliott, our master maker of speeds, on the line here. He's had to sit through going, who's Dua Lipa? What is a Red Hot Chili Pepper?
Nope,
What
no,
were
who
those
they are.
initials? What were those initials? Doug just said. Doug won't repeat them. But he's a master maker of speed. He grinds the gears and makes those transmissions turn a lot of RPM in that Dawsonville garage. And he's a 2018 Georgia Racing Hall of Fame championship mechanic. Dan, you are Goodyear color coordinated today, and we're going to talk tires in a moment. But I've got to ask you, if I haven't before, did you have a favorite concert growing up, and how much did it cost you to go to concerts in your concert going days, if you had them?
Yeah, went to several. ZZ Top was probably one of the best ones that I had gone to, but Neil Diamond, went and saw Neil Diamond, and those were probably 100, 200, 250 at the most for really, really good seats. But I understand the deal because I wanted to go see Celine Dion, and I also wanted to go see Adele. And
Okay.
Devin, you're right; those tickets are out of my price range for good seats, and it's concerts are just so expensive to go to. I can't do it anymore.
That's a great point. Yeah, we've got 21 pilots. We've got 21 pilots that are coming to Atlanta, or Alpharetta, actually, northern suburb of Atlanta. And so far, I see the cheapest ones are still like $200, and I have to wake up at 4 a.m. the next day. So, Devin and I were strategizing before the show. I could do that.
The
There's got to
nosebleed,
be some kind of coverage. There's got to be a media credential I could get or something,
the
right?
nosebleeds for Celine Dion were, I think, about the cheapest seat you could buy in the nosebleeds was about $1,000, and then it just went way exponential beyond that to the closer you got to the front. And I wanted to try to go, but couldn't do it.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, hey Dan, your heart will go on. Okay, your home. So,
Yep.
I'm surprised that Celine Dion and Adele were in your arsenal. Is that a lolly thing, or do you genuinely? I mean, I'm not making fun. I just was surprised.
No, it's just they were coming to town, and I get into a good bit of their music, but I'm kind of a child of the '80s, and I love
Okay.
that. I love Bob Seger, and love Bruce Springsteen and Jackson Brown, and a
Oh
lot of those
yeah.
artists that are on the just about on the end of retirement or already retired. But I love that music from that era, and I just Elton John, and you just got so many artists from that time, and for me it was just kind of pure music, I guess, and I enjoyed that era, and it's just the music that I like, and it's kind of stuck with me, and I've stuck with it. But I guess it came from an era also too. When you look at it, it was an era then that we were kind of in our heyday, and they were, and that music was in its heyday. So
Yeah.
it kind of went together. So it
Well,
takes you, and music is like anything. Music takes you to a time and place.
yes, it does. Yes,
And,
and
and
I think that's why people are so nostalgic and think that
yep.
racing in the Gen 4 era or the 80s or the 70s was just so much better. Captain Herb, the late Captain Herb Emery, and I used to debate this because I was always in the moment like, no, man, this race is pretty good. What are you talking about? There's 3 people on the lead lap back then. And he would be like, no, but you don't understand. You know, they were passing all the time. And I'm not saying either of us was right or wrong either, but music, certain sporting events, things like that, take you to a time and place, and then you remember them even better than they actually were. And hey, for me, it's always anytime the Chili Peppers come to town, gonna see them. That has been true lately with 21 Pilots, so I may miss them this time around. And usually it's true with Kendrick Lamar as well. But a concert that wasn't necessarily on my list, like, oh my gosh, like these are my favorite bands. But I went on August 1st, and I felt like I got in for a steal because it was $75. But I saw the Flaming Lips and Modest Mouse. Flaming Lips really only had big hits like in 2002. Modest Mouse really only had like one big hit. But that's not what it's about. These bands are kind of indie flavored, and the Flaming Lips were the headliner, and they do this really ethereal experience with the lights and including the crowd and putting the words up on the screen. You know, just a bunch of hippies and kind of spacey music, but it was a fantastic concert, a really engaging show. So glad that you guys over the years, including Devin very recently, have gotten to do that. And Devin, this weekend, we'll get to go out to LA. Yes, Dan.
Not
Flaming
this
Lips,
weekend.
Flaming Lips would kind of take me to the Rolling Stones, I guess.
Yeah, I would. You know, the Stones did come to Atlanta last year, I think it was, but I want to say I was out of town or I couldn't go. And I would have just gone to see the Stones, which will probably be one of your last times seeing them, right?
Some dude in Dawsonville at the Sonic was telling me that I needed to go to the Rolling Stones concert when they came here a few years ago.
Some dude in Dawsonville.
Not Dan Elliott.
He was right. He was right. Like Mick Jagger and Joe Biden are like just a couple of months apart in age. I'm just saying. Okay. Now, so that's not a political statement. That's just a difference in stature. That's all that is. Now, hey, so here's the deal. Let's break down Bristol. All right. We know the big story. Unfortunately for Christopher Bell, it wasn't Christopher Bell winning. But a JGR sweep in the first round. We don't need to analyze that. Okay. The Toyotas are fast. Christopher Bell broke the losing streak. Oh my gosh, he was mad on the radio. I swipe left. We're good. Okay. We're recording this on a Thursday. I want to ask Devin, because he was in Bristol first, give me a highlight and a low light out of Bristol. Something you loved, something that you wish you'd seen a better result of.
I think I could say I loved the Cup race on Saturday, the Bass Pro Shops night race at Bristol. How about that tire wear that we saw? Not unexpected, but we had our doubts about it from what we've seen from the last 2 races at Bristol, the spring race and then the fall race last year. So I gotta give, that's really the high point of the weekend was seeing the Cup race, seeing that tire wear there, the strategy come into place. And then I would say my low light for the weekend, or the low point, I guess, was seeing Josh Berry finish dead last 3 weeks in a row. I don't think you could have had a more terrible way to
You literally could not have.
begin your first playoff, first ever playoff.
He didn't complete a stage, I think, in the first round of the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. He did not complete a stage before having trouble. And the way it happened Sunday was an issue we saw with several of the Fords, as you pointed out to me on one of our long car rides, Devin. The rubber buildup in the right front caught something on fire. Now, the geometry, I'm saying geometry not in a chassis term, but I'm saying it in the way that different pipes and ducts and things are arranged in the front of the cars can be different. All right, there's certain things that the manufacturers do different. And the Fords were building up, and a few of them caught fire. Austin Cindric's caught fire. He lost like 5 or 6 laps on pit road, and my man just stayed in the car, smoked out. I mean, he Cheech and Chonged that thing, and then they fixed it, got the fire out, and then he finished the race and should have been kicked out of round 1. So should have Chase Elliott, who finished second to last. Elliott was the one who led to Josh Berry's demise the week before at Gateway. Elliott basically tried to fill a hole, as I've heard other people explain, tried to fill a hole at the bottom of the racetrack, which was the dominant groove. John Hunter Nemechek was there and did not lift, and Elliott started spinning, overcorrected, as he told me on PRN at the Care Center in a very short interview, and he nailed the wall. He also thought he was out of the playoffs, and he goes, "I'm screwed, right?" And I said, "Well, it's close." And he goes, yeah, I'm screwed. Well, it turns out he made it by a few points, and that's because the 4 drivers below the cut line in the Bristol race, and we're going to get to your high and low, Dan, in just a second. The 4 drivers below the cut line, they were out. Alex Bowman at one point looked like he might have had the winning strategy or was very close to it. It's like, oh my gosh, if he wins and knocks out his teammate, that would be insane, right? But he ended up finishing 8th in the race, just couldn't quite get it done. Had the 77 car, Hocevar's pit crew, they'd swapped after 2 disastrous races on pit road for the 48 team. Alex Bowman finished 7th. He was out of the playoffs. We mentioned Josh Berry. Shane Van Gisbergen. Gosh, has there ever been another driver who drove the number 88 who did poorly in the playoffs and was only good at one kind of racetrack? Dale Earnhardt. Sorry. No, look, I love Shane Van Gisbergen. I literally just wanted to make y'all laugh. That popped in my head the other day. I was like, oh my gosh, the parallel. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen, not only did he just struggle with the handling, but he spun out a couple of times at Bristol, one of the times on his own completely, and he finished way back. And who am I leaving out of that? Austin Dillon. Now, I said on the show, I thought there was a chance with tire management and only an 11-point delta between Austin Dillon and Austin Cindric entering the race on the cut line that Dillon might have a chance. You never know. Stay out, do something crazy, manage the tires. He won Richmond, but he was the first car to the second car to have tire issues that night by my count. And he just was off sequence after that. It became a race of managing tires. As we know, they were lasting, depending on how slow the laps they ran, 30 laps. Once they realized they had to dial it down, there were some that pushed the right side tires, not the left side, but the right side tires, 50 or 60 laps. Ty Gibbs was one of those, and he almost won that race before a mistake at the end we'll get to in a moment. So those were the 4 drivers that were out. Chase Elliott barely survives. Austin Cindric barely survives. Round of 12 goes to New Hampshire. Dan Elliott, for you, Bristol, what were you watching, the high and the low?
The high and the low, I think the high for me was the fact that it was a no strategy Bristol. Once they realized that the tire was dependent on each team and the setup they chose to go with at Bristol sealed their fate forevermore on how that night would play out. And we saw it play out so differently. And I love the fact that I saw cars up front that I normally don't see at the front. And I love that.
Yes.
And the low for me was, whether you like Ty Gibbs or whether you don't, I thought that was one of his best races I've seen him run, and it was kind of, for me, heartbreaking to see him have tire trouble and couldn't make it to pit road and lost the opportunity, I think, to have his first win.
Well, for sure. And I was covering his pits there. His grandfather, Coach Joe Gibbs, was sitting in the pit stall right next to where I was. I kept looking back at him, and I've got to admire the stamina of that man. You know, for not only sticking it through the whole race, but much like Roger Penske spent 24 hours on the pit box and Rolex 24 or whatever. And Joe Gibbs still comes to the media center after the race. He didn't have to do that after Christopher Bell wins, but he was locked in on Ty Gibbs. Obviously wants to see his grandson win. And Ty Gibbs, we have the video up on the 5 to Go podcast YouTube and Facebook pages. Be sure to follow those. Ty Gibbs telling me Bristol's one of his very favorite tracks. And he didn't know what to expect with the tires. He stopped me mid-sentence. In fact, he stopped all 3 of my questions mid-sentence. Maybe that's the universe paying me back for doing that to people. I don't know. But he was I had him as like an outside pick to win for sure on PRN when we were pitching stories and doing things like that. So he ended up finishing 8th. Now, Dan, you talked about this was a non-strategy race. To me, listening on the radios, the strategy became, how in the world can we make, even with an extra set of tires that Goodyear ended up giving the teams in stage 3, how do we make them last to the end? And there was a strategy I saw people do where they were stretching tires early so at the end they could have fresh ones to bolt on. And wasn't that strategy key at the end of the race when Adam Stevens and Christopher Bell did just that, and so did Brad Keselowski, who had that race won until the last caution. So you said no strategy.
My point in this is the fact that even though you had a strategy, the tire had a different strategy.
That's a great point. Okay, we need to mention, and then I want to get to your low light, Dan, unless the low light was Ty Gibbs losing. Or was it his good race a highlight, or his not winning a low light?
that was the low point. His having
Okay, got it.
trouble was the low point.
Got it. I want to make sure I had that right. So, okay, we were salivating, the media, the fans, even some of the teams, hoping that this tire was going to fall off in some way, maybe not as radically as it did in March of 2024 at Bristol, a race
Well,
won
it
by
fell
Denny
off of
Hamlin.
Hamlin's car.
But well, yeah, one completely came off. Yeah, it didn't wear out. It unbolted itself there.
Yep.
So but we were going, okay, and then practice and qualifying happened on Friday evening. The track temperature was a little bit warmer than it was Saturday night. And they had wear. In fact, Devin Kupka and I talked to Zane Smith the day of the race. He said that he and his teammate front row, Noah Gregson, saw cords after 75 laps. And I'm thinking, okay, these tires have a shelf life of about 75 laps, maybe, depending on the setup. And then they go out. AJ Allmendinger wins his first pole in 10 years. 10 years. And runs the dang rubber off that car. And then is the first driver to pit with tire trouble and still runs in the top 10 later on until having other issues, which showed the big pendulum swings in this race. The teams, as you mentioned, Dan, were thrown for an absolute loop by this thing, which is fun and entertaining, but it also makes me wonder if we still can't figure out when to make races with tire wear. That seems, and I'm not talking about Goodyear, I'm talking about just the sport as a whole. That seems like there's an issue. Like, how can we not figure out what wears tires and what doesn't? Now, I don't know, and I don't know that we have an answer. So, Devin, I want to ask you, because you were talking to drivers post-race. You were going up to the gaggles. I talked to some of the top five, but you were getting in the middle of it. What was the sentiment there? Was there an overall sentiment that you gleaned from drivers after the race?
The drivers that we got footage of that are up on the 5 to Go social channels, a lot of them were just the playoff drivers that were either eliminated or anything like that. So really, from the ones that I gathered video from, tire wear surprisingly wasn't that big of a topic. It was more like, all right, what's going to happen going forward? All right, this driver made it into the playoffs or made it into the round of 12, and then you had another one that didn't make it into the round of 12, and just kind of looking back on it, I remember SVG saying, somebody asked him, he's like, well, do you look at this as a success or failure not going into the round of 12? And then he was like, well, this is been a successful season, getting 4 wins in the first year as a full-time Cup driver. But
Yeah.
I think if the tire wear was in your favor, I think you liked it. If it's not so much. And I think some of the big teams aren't really in favor of this tire wear because it throws these massive strategies completely out the window, because we saw it at the Food City 500 last year. We saw it Saturday night. It just kind of throws everything off when it's a surprise like this. Unlike somewhere, say, like Richmond, where the pavement there and the surface is getting older, you kind of know what to expect when it comes to tire wear. So I think it's a little bit different when you go team to team. If it helps them, they like it. If it doesn't, they don't like it.
Well, I got to say, Adam Stevens, the race-winning crew chief, was in the media center, and he didn't say he disliked it, but he said that he wished that they had been able to plan a little better for it, that it wasn't so random. And one thing that Zane Smith even told us, Devin, before the race, just talking, we were like interviewing him with a camera in his face. We were just getting background because he was one of the drivers I had on pit road. And by the way, Zane Smith finished 3rd in this race and legitimately ran in the top 10 almost all night long. And Zane Smith said what was the difference between what they were seeing with their tires going to cords versus what they saw in Bristol in March of 2024 is that those tires, and Denny Hamlin said this too on Actions Detrimental, you could feel it starting to cord last spring. And you could feel it out and kind of ride on it. Whereas here, you had like 1 or 2 laps to get to pit road and your tire was going to go. Now, from what I remember for the 2024 race, there were a lot of drivers cutting tires and hitting the wall, whereas that wasn't happening in this race. So those are conflicting statements to me. But I think it's just a case of Goldilocks doesn't know if the bed is too hot, too hard or soft. It's like we don't know what we want, but we do like tire wear. Now, Dan, there's an element to me that I heard people complain about. And I don't like to indulge in the complaints, but this is not illegitimate. What is the difference between super speedway racing where they slow up 2 or 3 seconds and to go 3 wide the whole time, and it looks to the naked eye in a sports bar exciting, versus running 2 seconds slower at Bristol, where you're saving tires and then the lead and the pack keeps changing because of all these different tire strategies. Is there a difference between the two? Is one more wholesome or more entertaining than the other? Because the former people got over with immediately. This one, it seems like people are respecting the raw racing of it a little more, the short track one.
I think that it's a lot more evident at Daytona and Talladega what you're doing whenever you're pack racing and you're either saving tires or saving fuel, because nothing for the most part goes on. They run 3 wide or 2 wide and nothing happens. It's just like getting in a pack of trucks on the interstate and having to ride there forever till you can get a line to pace. But where Bristol was different was you could maybe take a little bit different line, and depending on what the tire setup, and they put down the PJ1, correct? They did the spray.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
they put it in the bottom lane of each set of turns.
Okay, so
very sticky. Devin and I both walked through it. Okay,
that's another factor that plays into this. But at Bristol, whenever you're riding side by side and you've got a pack for the most part all the way around the track on a half mile, it just looks different. And it is different because drivers, even going slower, you could pinch a driver to the inside and really cause him to spin out.
Well, and another thing about track. And I'm trying to go either or every other person here, but I want to stay with you, Dan, on this. Bristol, we've heard Dale Earnhardt Jr. say it, several other drivers say it, some other fans say it, and it did resemble this to me, but I don't know that I thought it independently on my own until I heard someone say it. It was a one-groove track on the bottom, and a lot of people said, including, you think about Brad Keselowski nailing Chris almost said it a second time, Christopher Bell's rear bumper on the last lap is old Bristol. Now, some people said this is like old Bristol. Kenny Wallace, I believe, said it's like old Bristol too. So was it like old Bristol, Dan, or did it just resemble old Bristol?
It resembled old Bristol because if it's Keselowski, if this was on the asphalt track that was the old Bristol, if he'd have popped...
Well, let's talk about the 2000s Bristol that was still concrete but was selling out.
Still, it to me, the Bristol that I go back to is the asphalt Bristol, and there's no way that you can compare the concrete to the asphalt. It's just so different in how and having to put the spray down to make this a competitive race with 2 lines, 2 lanes. It's so different. But I can't even conceive the comparisons that I have when you go back is the concrete and the asphalt. And it looks to me like the fact that since they've concreted this racetrack, the racing has not been, and I don't know that ever will be the same as asphalt was before they did the concrete.
But it changed radically in the concrete era as well, because it went from one groove around the bottom to then when they redid it and had the progressive.
How many things are you trying to do to make up for the fact that it's a one-lane racetrack? How many more things can you throw at it?
Yeah, well, I agree. No, I agree. So whether they meant to or not, they were just trying to create tire wear, it seems like, here, from everything we've heard and read. What I mean is the quote old Bristol is the Bristol of the 2000s and 90s, rattle his cage, Terry Labonte stuff, right? Around the bottom, you got to bump somebody to get them out of the way. If you get trapped on the top groove, you're just screwed and you get freight trained until you can get back in line. And it's a little bit similar in Martinsville, right? You don't generally want to be on the outside of Martinsville. Rarely do you. So I think that's what they were referring to, not necessarily a maybe even better version, which was the asphalt one. Nonetheless, there is a difference. Number one, the left side tires were not wearing out. All right, I want to say I heard, and he wasn't on my side at pit road, but I got to the point where I was seeing multiple drivers. Zane Smith's crew chief, Ryan Berginti, called this for his car multiple times. Right side tires only in a high tire wear race. That was the difference in the disparity between the left side and right side tire wear. The left sides were lasting forever. The right sides were not. Could we not work on the left side softness as well? and they were the sides who were running in the PJ1, by the way. That was a sentiment I heard too. Is could that be improved? But nonetheless, there was a lot of passing because of the saving of tires. There was a lot of strategy, and a lot of drivers had different kinds of races. Now, let me go through the top 10. We'll then look at some other stories and look ahead to New Hampshire. So Christopher Bell wins, only leads 12 laps. I heard too, I think it was Dustin Long said this on Brett McMillan's Pit Reporters on PRN, that Christopher Bell in the races he's won this year has not led a lot of laps. In fact, he explained his frustration with the number 20 team this year, and one of his, we're not leading enough laps. It's kind of the Chase Elliott thing. It's just Bell now has 4 wins. Elliott has 1. All right, but Bell won the race. Brad Keselowski seemed to have this thing won. They had the pit strategy called. He was saving his tires. Old tires, nursing it to the finish. Caution comes out. They have to pit then. They couldn't have stayed out on those in a restart. And he drives back up and can only get to second place there. He nails Christopher Bell in the rear end in turn 3 right in front of me. It was fun to watch. But Bell slows down, he said, to brace for it. He knew he was going to get the bump and run. And that helps him keep these Gen 7 cars with these thick tires, helped him stay on the racetrack. And Bell hangs on to win. Keselowski, who finished second, got out of his car. Hasn't won since Darlington last year. Slammed his gloves on the door frame of the car, and then he calmed down a little bit. I wish I could have talked to him right then, but I had about 3 or 5 minutes, and then we discussed it after the race there, and he said it was Bristol, baby, when I asked him if he was trying to rattle Bell's cage. He finished second. Zane Smith, we talked about him a lot. He ended up third. He finished runner-up in Nashville a year ago. Best finish for a front-row car this year. Zane Smith, third. Ryan Blaney had a great race, led 30 laps, finished fourth. 2 bad pit stops for the 12 crew. Wonder if that's going to rear its head later on in the season. The time of the pit stops did not matter this much because you were a lot of times pitting with only a few cars on the lead lap. You were a lot of times pitting on different pit strategies and big deltas between cars, so it's not like it was a tightly packed Bristol where losing 7 spots would kill you. That was 4th place finisher. Now, who finished 5th? The guy that was supposed to struggle, Devin Kupka. He's terrible in the Gen 7 car at Bristol. He was non-existent in the spring. His name, Devin? Joey Logano.
There we go.
And he even led 7 laps on
Racing
a pit
Reference was blocking my view with an ally ad.
But am I right? Everybody was asking Logano and saying, okay, if there's one race not to pick the 22, it's certainly Bristol and maybe the Roval, right? Even though he's won 2 night races, those were years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, this is a good finish for Joey Logano, and he really hasn't been in contention for wins at Bristol. Gosh, at least in any of the races I've been to, he hasn't been in contention for, but I mean, this is another, this is the time Team Penske starts getting things right. Not saying they go out and win Bristol races anymore. So I don't think Penske's won a Bristol race since Keselowski was on the team. I think it was
Yeah, Keselowski won the night race in 2020. I think I saw the banner in the media center.
No, it was the spring race, actually.
It was the spring race.
I think.
Well, okay, they have a one.
It was 2020.
They have a one. Penske has won Bristol in 5 years. I mean, that's not an achingly long streak. Hey, remember there were dirt races for 2021, 22, 23.
Well, hold on, wait a minute. Remember, Joey Logano won the inaugural dirt race at Bristol.
Well, there you go. So that just rips that. Well, okay, we're getting in the weeds here. Penske doesn't have some amazing losing streak at Bristol, okay? But Bristol has been dominated by Larson and Hamlin of late. Neither of which were a factor on Saturday night. We'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get to maybe the most surprising finisher in the top 10. How about Corey Heim, who was lapped before? And that's what I did love about this race, Dan, is people were laps down, and then things would happen, and enough cautions. And this race had the most caution laps in the modern era of NASCAR, by the way. That was maybe my low, these were long cautions. The Chase Elliott one, we understand with the fluid. I don't understand cleaning off the racetrack. Leave that tire dirt on there, man. Leave those marbles on. We don't need to clean the track every time we're under yellow. What happens if you stay green? The marbles are there anyway. Come on. But Corey Heim.
I guess they didn't want any more cars to burn.
Or that. Yeah, they could have had.
Yeah,
okay. Or that. That's a fair point. But Corey Heim was 6. Carson Hocevar went for there was a point in this race where Hocevar was running in the top 10. There was a point where he was running last almost, or the last car in the lead lap, saving tires. Then he went hard at the end, finished 7th. Alex Bowman was 8th. Chase Briscoe was doo-doo at the beginning of this race, and he ended up leading some laps and being one of the best cars in stage 3 and finished 9th. And then Ty Gibbs missed pit road on that final pit cycle and finished 10th. He cut a tire basically by staying out one extra lap and flat spotting those tires. Had an incredible race. We mentioned that. William Byron had really a terrible race and still finished 12th. He had damage all over the car. John Hunter Nemechek, a factor again, started inside the top 10. No, he didn't. He didn't start inside the top 10, but he ran a lot in the top 10. Just want to give him a nod. And then also, I want to give a nod. Did you see this, Devin? Austin Hill? Did you see what Austin Hill was doing? So Austin Hill was multiple laps down early in the race. And there was a point where he accidentally got called in the top 10 on PRN. And I was confused. I'm like, where is he running? And I kept looking up and down the starting line, and I just kept missing him in the running order, looking in the NASCAR app on my phone and looking up on the Colossus on the big screen. Austin Hill never got on the lead lap, but there was a point in the race where the 33 team, which is a third RCR entry, bolted on fresh tires and told him just drive as hard as you can. And he was passing cars as a 3 laps down, 25th, 28th place car like they were standing still. And it was hilarious. And he was up there in the top 5, wham, going around the outside. And the outside was absolutely detrimental to those cars. So I don't know if he was testing stuff. I mean, I don't know if you have any speculation, guys. We don't know. I wasn't listening to his radio. But Austin Hill put on a show there in a spot Winston Cup, like it's 2003, in a spot Cup start there for the Winston, Georgia driver. That's where that came from. So there you go. That's your rundown of the Bristol race. We saw Saturday night Eric Almirola went to victory lane. That was a fairly entertaining race, Devin. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, good, but it got kind of crazy at the end. Any thoughts on Almirola and Zillage?
It was funny because we had the races this weekend that were dominated by certain drivers. We saw Corey Heim dominate the truck race Thursday night, excuse me.
But Lane Riggs won.
This was really a Connor Zillage race, and then
Eric
Almirola with the pit strategy came out on top. That's just how the weekend started. Really, at Bristol was the dominant driver was not the driver who would win.
And Ty Gibbs, the reason I really was, over 200 laps led, 201, is because he was doing everything his team told him to do that I could tell. They were saying, we need you to run, I'm just making up a time, but a 17.5 second lap. Qualifying was like 15.5, all right? Run a 17.5 and just keep, and they could look on the dash and see what their lap time is. I need you to run that, and you're going to stay out longer than everybody, and that's our strategy, and we're going to save tires for the end. And he did it to a T, and he has been not getting the results, has been a fairly undisciplined driver. Over time, right? It just, it's taken him longer than expected to get his feet under him, and he did everything he was supposed to in the missed pit road at the end of the race and still finished 10th. Had a great night for him and a good rally. So that's Bristol there. Now, looking ahead, we're going to go to New Hampshire. We'll talk about that in a moment. Some other headlines from the week. With IndyCar puts out its 2026 schedule. We don't get deep on IndyCar in this race, in this show. We should, because the 4-time champion, the most dominant driver in that series, Alex Palou, I'm pretty sure is Devin's lost twin. I think. I don't know. Devin, are you Spanish?
I am not, but I have a lot of European in me.
Hey. Well, there you go.
Maybe a cross-border
there's going to be
something.
an Indy NASCAR doubleheader weekend for the Phoenix race in the spring of next year. Dan is shaking his head. Now, we tried this for the Indy Grand Prix, I think in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, or at a recent time. And then they didn't do it again. Dan, you were shaking your head. Is this not good to have the Indy cars run on the same day as the Xfinity Series?
I was just thinking about the question of asking Devin if he was Spanish and I'm thinking if I was Devin, I'd answer that C.
Yeah. Devin, buck twice if you're in Milwaukee. Wait, any opinions, guys? Anybody want to weigh in on IndyCar, NASCAR doubleheader? I didn't see that coming.
Why isn't that a Saturday night race? Because what I'm hearing is it's going to be run before the Xfinity race on Saturday. Saturday.
That is strange that it would be before. Huh. Yeah, well, it's a big play. Look, Fox is going to have coverage of both. I'm sure that plays into it. It's March. I don't know. I don't know why Saturday night would be off limits. Well, I could tell you one reason maybe. Y'all see the TV ratings for Bristol? You see
Not
those?
good.
Like 1.5 million watching on a Saturday night. We're not going against the NFL. The biggest
Don't
college
get college
games,
football though.
but if the biggest games happen during the day. Well,
Hey, look! Remember, Georgia, Tennessee didn't, and Tennessee was hosting Georgia, and that's what
true.
2 hours from Bristol, in Knoxville,
But didn't the
Tennessee.
game
That's
end?
a big game. That's a
but
big
didn't
deal
the
for a
game
lot of
end
people
before
up
the
there.
race? Couldn't you have tuned in? I mean, I don't know.
Heck,
That
the
was
game was on still right as the race was. The game had just wrapped up, like after the engines were fired.
okay. Well, I just don't understand 1.5 million. Like that's two really dreadful, maybe three dreadful
The Burning
ratings
Man
deals in a
documentary
row.
was on, wasn't it?
The Burning Man documentary. Danica Elliott's favorite. Wait.
You know, speaking of Phoenix, maybe we'll see a live performance of Danica Patrick's car maintenance insurance commercial. I don't know if you've ever seen that on TV, but it's at Phoenix.
Oh.
The background's Phoenix Raceway.
Oh, okay. Wow, we're just in the weeds. I know what you're talking about. Car Shield. Is it Car Shield?
Yeah, I
can't.
think so. Something
Yeah,
like that.
I've seen the commercials before. Okay, so anyway, they're having a doubleheader weekend. You guys have almost no opinion on it. We're on to the next one. So there was a big pit
What
crew
about
swap
NASCAR?
from the 48 to the
Is
7.
NASCAR going to Le Mans next year?
Haven't
I
heard a
don't
word.
think
Why
so.
didn't they go this year? It was such a beautiful big thing to go to in 2024, or was that 2 years ago? God, was that 2 years ago?
Pull that up and see if we're
23,
going.
yeah.
So why didn't they go back? I thought they were creating a
think-
new class.
I-
I don't know.
I think we should just do a cup race at Le Mans.
Let's just do a cup race in Le Mans. There we go. Respond right here. Okay. Le Mans, I don't know what to talk about with that, except Petit Le Mans coming up here in the Metro Atlanta area, Brazelton, Georgia, October 10th and 11th weekend, right? Yeah, October 10th and 11th. I will not be able to go. I'll be at church camp with my high schoolers. And if you need a racing fix and you're in Georgia, Petit Le Mans is awesome. You don't have to love all the drivers and know what's going on. It is so much fun to watch, and the whole experience is great. They don't pay me to say it. I just love Rick Humphrey and his team at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Okay. And by the way, I have gotten an inkling that there will be, and I don't have the details yet, there will be another Echo Park Speedway open house coming up ahead of this coming race season. I've heard tell. I'm going to be like Devin and say, I've heard. I can't tell you anything about it, but no, I've heard about it. I'm sure I don't have any other details with that, but I think it's going to be great. So we heard about a swap at Bristol, and some of this swap is going to take its way into New Hampshire. I'm talking about pit crews, talking about the Alex Bowman and Carson hosts of our crews. Hendrick Motorsports does the pit crews for Spire Motorsports. The 48 and the 77 swap crews after Bowman's terrible races on pit road to open the playoffs. Now Bowman's out of the playoffs. He's still keeping Hocevar's pit crew, which I kind of like, hey, why don't you switch it back? I mean, let Carson have his boys back. He's out of the playoffs, but they still are trying to compete to get owners' points and be as high as fifth in the points at the end of the year. That's why. But they have taken now Alex Bowman's new front tire changer and moved it to William Byron's car. We moved them to Byron's car. So now William Byron essentially has the old 77 front tire changer, and Byron's tire changer is gone all the way back to the 77 car. Got all that? Yeah, okay. That happened too. Denny Hamlin lost a wheel during the race, Dan Elliott, which is kind of weird at the place it happened and how he hit someone, and then it happened, hit Allmendinger, and it happened in the race, and he's going to lose his tire changer, one of his tire changers at Jackman, but their suspensions are deferred one race weekend, Dan, from New Hampshire ahead to Kansas and the Roval. All right, so does that mean, Dan, maybe because they think they have a great chance to win New Hampshire versus the other two, so they want to have their perfect pit crew, or why do you think they would defer the suspensions, or are they just deferring the inevitable?
I don't know what the strategy would be with that, other than the fact the crew has worked together for so long, and it would give them an opportunity to get other people working together and fill the gap, so to speak, for that period of time. And that's the only strategy that I could go by.
That's a great point. He also has 3 New Hampshire wins. So if he goes out and pops off a win and gets win number 60 in the Granite State, he would be able to cruise the rest of the round. So that really, there's a lot of good strategy there. So that's Hamlin's deal. During the Bristol race, Devin Kupka, and you're all over this. You're into the viral stuff. You're into the virals. Ryan Blaney's nephew, I believe it's Cale and Emma Conley's son, if I'm not mistaken, got a hold of a radio in the Blaney motorhome, and apparently that radio had a talkback button. Devin, what happened?
Yeah, apparently his nephew got onto the radio and said, and it was like, I think it was just after or right before the race ended. It was, go win
It was during
this
a caution.
race. Or it was under caution, excuse me.
It was
and
definitely
said,
not under green, yeah.
Go win this race. That's what his nephew said.
That is fantastic. And thankfully it didn't happen under green. Ryan Blaney, I did see a comment. He said, okay, we're going to make sure we don't have any talkback radios in the motorhome. Speaking of racing electronics, I had to bite the bullet and buy a new scanner for them finally. My old Legend device finally kicked the can. I probably just need a battery, but they didn't even have one. So racing electronics, they did not hook me up. They just let me buy one for them.
Well, they hooked me up this weekend because mine was a faulty one, but this was a replacement one that I had received at Nashville a few years ago. So,
no, 1 year. It was a 1 year warranty. Shh.
No, they got me on a 1 year warranty now. I got the box.
Yes. He's got the box. Everybody, stay tuned. Respond right here. Do you want to see Devin put the racing electronics box? Respond right here. All right. Hey, Dan, any good stories that you've heard about radios over the years, especially as teams didn't have as advanced radios in the 1980s at NASCAR tracks?
Yeah, let's go back prehistoric here. Whenever you could pretty much, if you knew anybody that could program a radio, in the early day, or you could get a hold of you could order the crystals to change frequencies in the radios. So you could basically, if you knew somewhat a little technology about radios, you could actually come up with the frequencies, and all you needed was a frequency counter to find out what the team had, and then you could order the crystal chip and change that. Or in the early radios that were still, I think they were still analog, you could change frequencies.
Oh yeah, they were.
Those, and very easy to do. But yes, there were several occasions that somebody other than the team crew driver was able to get a hold of a radio, and they actually called several cars to pit road. This happened several races in a row before it stopped. I don't know what the deal was, but they finally, I imagine they put the fear of God in whoever was doing this, because I never heard that they got caught, but they were pit. So if the driver didn't recognize the voice, which most everyone that was over the wall in that era was able to talk to the driver. So
that's
you
insane.
had no idea
that somebody could just do that.
Yeah, it would have been easy to have done and sound like somebody else, somebody on the crew. But it happened, and it wasn't frequent. But there was a period that went through that it was a problem for several races before it went away.
That's like the scene from Devin's favorite movie, Anchorman, where they're prank calling Veronica Corningson. They're like, "Oh, excuse me, this is network. This is network," and they're right next to her, and she's just looking right at them while they're prank calling.
And
that's great.
Doug, another thing that you could get into too was a lot of teams used frequencies that weren't licensed to them, and it was important that you get licensed on the frequency you were on. But you've got to understand that you were traveling to multiple areas, and you had to license for all of those areas on the date that you were supposed to be there. So you might have a construction company with the same frequency as your radios doing construction nearby while there was a race event, and you were getting walked on 6 ways to sundown during the race on we need that backhoe over here right away, or other conversations that were just out in left field, but they knew what was going on in those conversations. Were in some of the others where it was deliberate calling the car to pit road. So but you had to be careful on the radios, what frequencies you had and what areas you were in to use them.
Well, that's a great point. And there was some of that. There was a lot of interference and teams going to backup frequencies and channels at Bristol. And I'm sure just being the the big metal bowl that Bristol is, the cacophony. Maybe there's the atmosphere affects that. In my previous traffic reporting job where I was on two-way radios, the atmospheric inversion, they called it, it would affect the signals all the time. It's something that makes you kind of wish they had teched their way around this. Like Formula One, everything is like super digital and everything like that. And I know these
but it might have
radios, I
been
think,
the
are
FBI
well, they're not
blocking
digital,
signals.
they're analog. They're analog, but there's a capability to make them digital, but the world would have a cow if that happened because all of their scanners are analog. So there you go. Analog, it's a tougher device usage to have these days with all the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, everything around. Okay, so that's radio talk. Respond right here. Should we talk about radios every week? Respond right here. Come on. All right. Now, outside of NASCAR, Tony Stewart has announced that he will not drive his own Top Fuel dragster next year in NHRA. He will instead join Elite Motorsports. And no, I don't know a thing about them. I don't follow NHRA very closely, but I found this news interesting. Stewart replaced his wife, Leah Pruitt, who had a baby over the last year, and she will return to the ride that was hers beforehand, driving for her husband's team. Stewart, on another driving news, has added Rico Abreu, who's just a total just owner of wing sprint cars there. I mean, he's great, and he'll be in Tony Stewart's wing sprint car team. They're going to run the series that Kyle Larson co-owns there, the High Limit series, for a full schedule to do other select races. Donnie Schatz was with Tony Stewart Racing for 18 years, and they split up in August, all right? So Rico Abreu now going to be in that team. Now, we talked a couple episodes ago, Will Power, after 17,000 years driving the number 12 Penske, a lot of times Verizon car in the IndyCar series, is being replaced by David Malukas. David Malukas moving over from the AJ Foyt team to be with Will Power, or be in place of Will Power for Team Penske. Will Power is moving to Andretti Global, which is no longer owned by Michael Andretti, by the way, to replace Colton Herta. Colton Herta moving to F1 in a reserve role for the new Cadillac team that is also essentially owned by Andretti Global. All right, so there's some IndyCar moving around. And in the truck series, Grant Enfinger is split up with longtime crew chief Jeff Stankiewicz in the CR7 Motorsports team, and their days go back together to Thor Sport and GMS Racing. But Grant Enfinger's new crew chief will be 2012 championship winning crew chief for the truck series with James Busher. Devin remembers that when James Busher won the truck series championship. Michael Shelton will be the head wrench on truck number 9. I just saw that little nugget there, I think for Bob Pockris on X maybe, or I think I saw that there. So yeah, there you go. Appreciate Bob putting out a lot of those good headlines through the week. And big thanks to Bob Pockris, right, Devin, for hosting the Tweet Up each and every week at the races that he's at, because he has to split his schedule with IndyCar now. He did an X Up. It really should be called X Up, right? At Bristol, and there was a couple dozen fans that showed up there, several other media members. And Dev, you and I got to hang out with Jake and a couple other gentlemen too, but Jake said it was, I think, his 115th NASCAR race and his 10th race at Bristol, and Jake is 30. He lives in Lithia Springs, Georgia, West Metro Atlanta. We told him about the 5 to Go podcast, told him to, like, subscribe, be a sub, all that stuff. But man, what'd you think of Jake, Dev?
I thought that was awesome, and I think I might be starting to catch up with him because I've been counting my races lately, and I think I'm at like 40 something races in the past. I think it'll be 44 by the end of this year in the past 4 years. But
wow,
that's really cool though. That just somebody that's just working and really just enjoys NASCAR to be able to go out to all these races and to 100 races. That's really that's really impressive.
And I think he means across multiple series because he went to Monaco F1. Mm-hmm. And got like some kind of grandstand ticket that was almost affordable, and he's going to the Vegas F1 race.
I think that was before the pandemic, though. I believe when he went to Monaco.
But anyway, props to Jake, who is wearing a full 1996 Olympics jacket, and it was like 90 degrees outside or 85 degrees out there. And then I think it was David who was his friend too, who's a big race fan. I forget the other gentleman that was with him there, but big props to them.
Speaking of the Olympics in Atlanta, on this day, 1989, was when it was announced that the Olympics would be coming to Atlanta in 96.
You sure that wasn't 1990? It was 1990.
Or maybe it was 1990.
September 18th, 1990.
This whole thing about it.
So this is really niche here. And Dan, have you ever been to the Atlanta History Center?
No, I have not.
You boys both need to go. No, they're not paying us to say this.
I've been to the
You need to go
cyclorama.
to the Atlanta History Center. Okay, so the cyclorama is now inside of the Atlanta History Center instead of being at Zoo Atlanta. And if you're a Bank of America is not paying us to say this, all right, respond right here. Bank of America, sponsor 5 to go. If you're a Bank of America customer, there is one weekend per month at the Atlanta History Center that you could get in for free. You and anybody with you, all right? And Momo and her mom and me got in for $3 a couple of weekends ago and spent like 3 hours inside the Atlanta History Center and just had a blast. All right, so you should go check it out. Just if you're a history wonk or just want to really know about Atlanta, and again, I know there's listeners all over the country, we'll say, maybe the world. So, but Atlanta History Center, if you pass by through our fair town at Buckhead, West Paces Ferry is excellent. You need to go to that.
Have you been
So look,
to
we've
the
talked all
Dawsonville
about.
History Center?
I have not. I've only been through the Dawsonville, Georgia Racing Hall of Fame, and I love that. But if I need to go to the Dawsonville History Center, is that a different spot, or are you
Yeah, it's
pulling
right
one
here.
on me here? It's right here. Then I have been there. That's correct. All right, previewing New Hampshire. Previewing New Hampshire. Who is the best driver in the Gen 7 era at New Hampshire Motor Speedway? Who wants to guess?
Oh, it's got to be Christopher Bell.
Okay, that's one guess. Dan?
I'm at a loss here. I don't know.
All right, so Christopher Bell's number 2. Technically, Joe Gibbs as well. Joe Gibbs Racing as well. Martin Truex Jr.
Whoa.
He's led 426 laps in the Gen 7 era there and won one of those races. He dominated that, 3 top 10s. But he's not racing this weekend. So, yes, it is Christopher Bell. 2 wins out of those 3 races, 2022, and then last year, and that was a race that was approaching darkness. They had rain tires on at the end. Really exciting event. Third on that list, Kyle Larson. Not one, but he has 2 top 5 finishes and an average finish of 7th. Chase Elliott, only 1 top 10, but an average finish of 10.7. If that's not as Chase Elliott of a stat as you can have. But it shows to me that if you have stats that are that low, that this race actually, there are a lot of comers and goers and a lot of attrition, especially in last year's event, that can happen. Denny Hamlin, 5th most points over the Gen 7 era, but he does have 3 wins in his career. And then the rest of the top 10, Tyler Reddick, Joey Logano, Chase Briscoe, Ross Chastain, and Bubba Wallace, who, by the way, was very fast in Bristol and got crashed out toward the end there and finished way back, but he was able to easily advance into the next round. And now in the round of 12, he's only a little bit above the cut line because now the intensity ratchets up. Any expectations from New Hampshire? Devin, anything that you're planning to see, wanting to see, storylines?
The thing I've been joking about for a couple of weeks, I want to see how SVG does.
Hey.
It's a big flat oval.
Okay, hold on. I asked SVG off the air. I said, okay, look, there have been some people in my life been telling me that you running the Legend car, I didn't say your name, Devin, because somebody else had said that he said the Legend car was helping his oval racing craft. I don't know if he did say it and didn't mean it, or I don't know. But I said, hey, is that really true? I mean, he goes, absolutely not. He goes, no, it doesn't help me at all. So there you go. For what it's worth. Now, Dev, I'm going to let you take that one. Are you still sticking with you want to see how SVG does?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, racing is racing still.
It
different type of car, but similar surface.
It is an extremely different type of car. By the way, modifieds will be racing at Bristol, and they're going to be racing at 9 in the morning on Saturday, by the way. Just interesting little thing, but they got a packed day there. No Xfinity cars. There will be trucks. Trucks are at 12 noon Saturday. No lights in New Hampshire. Cup race Sunday afternoon. That's your haphazard schedule. Performance Racing Network and the NASCAR Radio Network, or NASCAR Racing Network, will have truck action, Xfinity action, and Cup practice and qualifying in the Cup race through the weekend. I just said Xfinity. There is no Xfinity race, but they'll have trucks and Cup this weekend. All right, so be sure to tune in for that. Dan, anything that you want to look at going into New Hampshire?
I think all we need to do is get Dale Jr. behind the fact that we need lights at New Hampshire, and that would happen almost immediately. I don't know with on a serious note, with the anomalies that we've seen with these playoff races so far, I think that's the thing that's been the constant so far to me is the number of anomalies, because I had talked about Josh Berry, and if he'd had trouble at Bristol, then fate was telling you that he wasn't to be in the playoffs, and that's the way that ended up. And I had no idea that he would have that kind of trouble that early in the event. And it's just been anomaly after anomaly on these events so far to me, and I know not so much for other people, but I kind of expect that trend to follow suit a little bit, and I kind of like this because it does shake up the field. It's almost like putting all the field in one of the bingo wheels and spinning it and pulling out a number. You just don't have any idea.
That's what you think Bristol was like?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And some would argue what the playoffs are like
who
too.
Was going to be where at what time, and the fact you were talking about Bristol, and the fact that you saw different people at different times. Well, that's what happens when your strategies aren't the same or circumstances aren't the same. And I'm on fresh tires, and I pace a bunch of people, and a caution comes out and catches me at a great opportunity to be ahead of a lot of these people. And if the just circumstances of the events would have been opposite, where they had gotten tires and I didn't, well, I'm behind the 8 ball, and I can't make that up. So I think you saw that play out. And yes, it was a strategy, but it wasn't, because it was the fact of where you were, when did you get fresh tires, and when did the caution come out on the racetrack, catching you in that position, because luck goes a long way in this. And I know a lot of times you create your own luck, but in the Bristol deal, I don't see that. I think it was just the luck of the draw on where you were at when the cautions came out, and there were enough cautions.
Well, that
kept this exciting to me, and kept the field shook up.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, and I think that's what some people would like to have back, is with how many, it was 14 or 15 cautions, is if you got it at the wrong time, it was rough, and also you just didn't have a sense of when your tire was going to go. It was already gone by the time you had it, so you just had to kind of, as soon as you had cords, come to pit road, basically, and it was a surreal scene on pit road, seeing those tires continue to come off and just be shredding apart. It's something I don't want to take back. That was a lot of fun to cover. And if it's refined a little bit, not by the teams, but by the sport in general, it'd be fun to watch. Now, looking at the playoff standings real quick. By the way, the Truck Series had their middle race of playoffs in round number 1. Xfinity just opened the playoffs there at Bristol, and Cup concluded their round 1 of the playoffs at Bristol. So it's so confusing. I know why they can't have them matched up, but it's still weird. For the Cup Series, there are literally only 29 points that separate first place Denny Hamlin from 12th place Tyler Reddick. Reddick is 3 points behind the cut line. Ross Chastain and Joey Logano are tied at 2 points each behind the cut. Austin Cindric is -1. So we have no idea. We have no idea who exactly is good. There isn't the 4 people that fell out of the playoffs this round of 16. It's not so totally surprising. I mean, maybe Shane Van Gisbergen with all the playoff points he had, but it wasn't. I mean, he struggles on the ovals in comparison to the rest of the Cup Series. He's way better than me, though, so I'm not going to throw too much dirt on him. But he would say he's still got a lot of work to do, and I think in the next year or two that might really change. You know, Alex Bowman barely got enough points. Austin Dillon, a miracle winner. Who's the other one? Josh Berry, frankly, not a miracle winner maybe, but the rest of his season, besides the Vegas win, has not been much to talk about. And then he just epically bombed out. None of those drivers showed anything in round 1. None. But here in round 2, that this is where the heat goes up. And if you're William Byron, only 17th most points in the Gen 7 era at New Hampshire. Small sample size, only 3 races. But that team has just been off lately, which probably means they're going to go out and lead 200 laps Sunday. Okay, who knows? And I'll save my thought about that for final thoughts. But the playoff cut line's very close. I want to quickly scroll up to Xfinity and Truck Series playoffs just to give you a sense of what we got there. With the Xfinity Series, there also were some drivers that had issues at Bristol. Austin Hill struggled the whole night at Bristol. He tried some strategy, didn't have any playoff points entering Bristol, and now he's minus 16 to the cut line. Minus 24, Sammy Smith had big trouble in the race. I think he was out early. He had an engine issue, I think, or he had a mechanical issue that retired him early. 12th in points, minus 24. Jesse Love and Nick Sanchez tied for minus 3, and then just above the cut line, Taylor Gray plus 3, Sheldon Creed plus 7, and Sheldon Creed, Dan, your favorite, you love these obscure Xfinity stats. He got what number second place finish in his career, having not won a race?
Number 9.
15.
15.
And I had to count that. So, okay, I was on pit road post-race. I interviewed Sam Mayer, who was kind of like my Ryan Blaney pick on Saturday. Friday, it was Sam Mayer. Mayer's going to spoil the Zillage show, baby. And he was good. Mayer was very good. Didn't quite get it done. He finished, I think, second, third. I'll look at the race results in a second. But then I got to interview Creed. Creed put on tires and was on a heater, baby. He was chasing Eric Almirola. Given 5 more laps, he might have gotten by him. And I had a long time to wait for the interview because TV had him. And I kept counting his second place finish. That can't be 15. And it was 15 second place finishes. Still hasn't won a race. That is tough. What would you say? I'm not trying to skip over you, Devin. Dan, what would you say to a driver in a top series like that, 15, and you still ain't won one? What do you say to them?
There's not anything you can say except it's kind of like that deal Mark Martin got into that just couldn't get it together to get a championship. Yeah. And what do you say? There's nothing you can say because it's just the opportunities, the stars don't line up. It's and the harder you try. Yeah,
your signal's going in and out there, Dan. But yeah, or maybe it's mine. But
he's knocking on the door.
Yeah, he is knocking on the door for sure there. But yeah, and Sheldon Creed, and he handled it as a good sport there. But gosh, that's a tough one there. Brandon Jones, I mean, really, these points are close. Brandon Jones, 6 in points, plus 8. 5th in points after the first race. Harrison Burton, plus 9. But the points are so close at Xfinity, just like Cup. Hard to say. Connor Zilic, by the way, plus 85 to the cut line with 2 other races in the round. He almost clinched in Bristol to go to the next round. That's the kind of year he's had. All right, quickly with the truck series, and I know we're going over on time. We got to get going here. Corey Heim won the first race of the playoffs. Lane Riggs won the second one. But then for the cut line, Daniel Hemrick, Ty Majeski, they're in really good shape going into the final race here in New Hampshire. Grant Enfinger, Ankrum, they're each plus 29. Caden Honeycutt plus 18. Raja Caruth plus 14. And below the cut line are the 2 guys that had a ton of trouble at Bristol. Your pole sitter and Georgia driver, Jake Garcia, minus 14, and Chandler Smith has opened the playoffs with 2 terrible races. All right? And Chandler Smith, minus 24. He popped the wall at Darlington and crashed. He had a flat tire after hitting the wall at Bristol, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go. That's where the trucks shape up as they head to New Hampshire this weekend. All right, final thoughts. 5 to go in an hour and 7 minutes here. Devin Kupka's nodded because he's like, dude, I got to go to work, man. Any last thoughts?
I had a final thought and it completely flew out of my head. But I will say this: Dan Elliott, if you need any history knowledge about Dawsonville, he is the history museum of Dawsonville.
That's it. I love it. Dan, final thoughts for you.
Nope, just looking forward to the next round of playoffs, and I hope it's been the same as the last 3. Just a lot of anomalies and a lot of things different that will be exciting races.
And I think it seems like we're set up for the intensity level to keep going up, not just because of the stakes, but just there's a sense in the air. I say that, and then it could be totally boring at some point. I don't know. But, hey, my final thought is it's getting harder and harder each year in the Gen 7 era, I feel like, to figure out who the championship contenders really are. Despite the fact Shane Van Gisberger won 4 races, the rest of his battery is much like a rookie in the Cup Series. Denny Hamlin, 5 wins. You got to say right now has the Mo with him, the favorite. But at any given week, he could struggle, and Christopher Bell or William Byron or even Bubba Wallace or whoever could win. It's just really tough to figure it out, and I'm not sure that's a bad thing, but I will say it makes it tough to build the next superstars because really, who are they, right? Is it Carson Hocevar? Well, he hadn't won yet. Is it Connor Zillage? He isn't in Cup yet. Oh, let's not forget guys who've been in the Cup Series 10 years and are supposed to be the superstars. Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott, and they don't win often enough to really gain that status. Kyle Larson had been, but even lately he's been on a cool streak. So these cars, the parity, makes it tough, I think, for fans to glue on to people because they don't have that person they either love to love or love to hate. Well, I guess they love to hate Hamlin, but those days are numbered anyway. Hey, thank you for listening to the 5 to Go podcast because Hamlin's going to retire, and I'm not telling you he's going to die. Okay, gosh. Calm down. All right, 11 Nation. No, be sure to subscribe on Apple and Spotify. We'd love for you to weigh in on YouTube as well. 5 to Go podcast Facebook page. Devin Kupka did an outstanding job putting up videos and content all weekend long there as he did on YouTube as well. So for Dan and Devin, I'm Doug. Hit us on the social media, and we'll talk to you next week as we digest what happened at New Hampshire Motor Speedway here on the 5 to Go podcast.